All right, here we go. Hey, Michael. It is
Hey, how's it going?
yeah, nice to talk to you again.
Nice to see you and talk to you as well.
Yeah, happy New Year. As you know, as we're getting into this new year, I'm hope you have you made some good resolutions, I imagine.
I did. Now it's the trick that we all have is sticking to them, right?
That's right. That's right.
I didn't join the
Okay.
gym this year. I went with the Peloton instead. So
Nice. Well, yeah, that's that.
quickly become addicted to that. Let's see if that'll last.
I know that sounds like a lot of fun. I've been hearing people get that machine, and it'd be interesting to try it out. So I guess what we'll do is we'll go ahead and kick things off here. So welcome everyone to the Rewards Mastermind. We're a place where we kind of discuss the new compensation trends and reward trends, and we often bring on some great leaders, such as right now we have the CEO of DecuSoft. I'll introduce Michael in just one moment. And but as we start getting into a little bit of housekeeping in here as we start, the Rewards Mastermind is multicast across various places on social media, LinkedIn, YouTube, all those different places that you might enjoy. But we're also broadcasting here on Zoom, and so if you happen to be on the Zoom platform, you can ask questions as we go along. As those that are joining us right now, you feel free to ask questions. Jackson will monitor the chat box and bring up some of those questions as they come in. And but today we're pretty much free form. If you happen to be on one of the social media platforms, you can also leave comments or questions there as well. We'll go back and look at those after the session. So a little bit about our host today. So my name is Sam Reeve. I'm with Comp Team. We're a compensation consultancy firm. I've been around for over 10 years now. I've enjoyed working at some large companies early in my career, but now I focus on the small to mid-size, specifically in that technology space, helping them grow and scale. My colleague Howard Nisewitz is usually with us today, but unfortunately he's taking care of some of those family members that COVID's been hard on a lot of us, and also just increasing stress and so forth. So Howard is just helping some of his family members get adjusted there. So we'll see him on the next Rewards Mastermind next month. So that being said, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker today, Michael Perez he's of DecuSoft, and you're the new Chief Executive Officer of DecuSoft, Michael. Is that right?
Yes, I am, Sam.
Yes. So I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit about your journey, but I know that you're a seasoned professional and part of one of the top compensation platforms in the industry. So really excited to hear your perspective on compensation and the trends that are coming towards us right now. Of course, the big topic of today is the Great Resignation and how COVID and virtual workplaces and so forth have changed the way we think about pay and performance in the industry, and how systems are adapting to get ahead of this continuing trend. So as we get started here, Michael, could you first tell us a little bit about yourself? I mean, how did you get into the world of compensation and systems and so forth, and land at DecuSoft?
So I'll give you the Cliff Notes version to spare the long story, but I started my career in human capital through the staffing side of the business. I really stumbled my way into that, to be very candid, but I enjoyed it early in my career. I wound up after 9/11. It was one of those moments where we reflect and you kind of make decisions. And I decided to start my own firm at that time. It was kind of like, hey, we only live once kind of mindset. So started a firm, focused mostly on staffing, really heavily on staffing, on kind of what we called managed contract staffing, or RPO, probably more of the term today. And it was quite successful. We did that for a bit. And very early in that, customers started asking us for HR advice, and it became somewhat of a consulting practice fairly early in the process. And one of the main areas that we got a lot of requests from, especially when we were doing executive hires and sales organization build outs and staffing, is companies needed compensation plans that would have the proper motivation and structures to engage their workforce. So I actually did a fair amount of consulting work early in my career as a result of that. I always found it very intriguing. I always found, the psychology of design. How do you structure programs? How do you create the right incentives? How do you then, manage that all the way through? How does that evolve over time? Those were things I just found personally interesting. Fast forward over the years, wound up starting my first startup back at that time, a software as a service company, focused more on knowledge, HR knowledge and advice in the cloud. Sold the company to ADP. Joined them for about 6 years afterwards, and spent some time integrating that platform, doing a number of other things at ADP. I had the pleasure of doing with a great organization there, and it was interesting to kind of see how the market had continued to evolve. So I went off, spent some more time in the traditional HCM software outsourcing, sort of the house, and then had this opportunity not too long ago, middle of last year, where I was approached by someone working with DecuSoft and said, we want to grow. We have this great platform, a great history, a lot of great customers, but we need to kind of take this organization to the next level. And it just lined up nicely. I had this sort of, hidden passion for the comp side that had been out there for a long time, and I'd kind of collect a little bit too much dust over the years, kind of focused more broadly HCM technology. And, I just felt like everything aligned really nicely, and not to fall into the trap, but, with everything going on and, the themes in the marketplace, it was kind of like, what do I really want to be doing? And we have a great team here with a really fantastic product. And, we're excited about what the future is and what's happening in the marketplace. I feel like this is, the next 5 years or so, I think this segment, comp and the related sort of tie-ins with the employee experience will be the fastest growing of HR segments of HR tech over the next several years.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I think there's been a huge shock to the HR market overall, and just with the acceleration of remote work, and it's caused companies all over the world, and software companies as well, to rethink about how they're approaching the problems that companies are facing. So right now, I mean, I know that compensation is definitely not one size fits all. I mean, there's companies that have a variety of different approaches from small to large, and often they have a certain mindset in place of what they would like, but what they can typically handle is something that's different. And I know that DecuSoft is as a premier compensation tool, is able to customize itself and configure itself to meet the needs of all those different approaches. So are you seeing some significant changes in the way that companies are looking at compensation due to the pandemic and now the Great Resignation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, even though the pandemic, obviously we're 2 years in, for all intents and purposes, and the things that have come out of that, the remote, the hybrid workforce, since the fall of last year, this, clamoring around Great Resignation and the trends of what's happening in the market. A lot of that's still fairly early if you think about it, right? Mm-hmm. And everyone's sort of navigating what's happening out there in the marketplace. So I think everyone's learning together is what I continuously say. And there's no one size fits all for comp, and there's no one size fits all answer, in my opinion, for how to deal with these issues, because, organizational culture, what you do as a business, who you work with, what customers you work with, what talent you're trying to attract and retain, all of these things kind of get into the blender. And that's really where the answer ultimately comes out in terms of, but not everybody gets a chocolate shake when you throw it in the blender. Sometimes it's strawberry, sometimes it's vanilla, right? So I think we have a bit of that going on. Some of the themes though that we do see and I kind of equate this because I've spent a lot of my time in my career on what I kind of described as more broadly HCM, right? Early in career, I mentioned staffing, how do you get right talent in the organization? How do you keep them? More broadly, HCM software, payroll, those kinds of the transactional side. And now I'm in this piece with DecuSoft that is incredibly, in my opinion, strategic for a business, but in many ways is still kind of transactional for a lot of businesses. So there's this transitory sort of transitional period that's happening that I believe, and I think organizations are starting to open up the eyes and saying, can we just continue to sort of go through the paces of, hey, it's a merit cycle, hey, it's a bonus, cycle, hey, it's a whatever the case may be, or do we need to start getting creative about how we're attracting, what we're doing to recognize, what those reward systems look like, and how those are going to get administered? And I think we're moving much more quickly than people realize in that direction. But it's one of the things that the evolution of that, Sam, for a lot of organizations that are coming off of convoluted spreadsheet systems that have been homegrown over the years that don't integrate with their, traditional HCM or whatever, that's kind of painful for them right now. So the easy answer, kind of going back to my joke early in the discussion about I didn't join a gym, the easy answer is just do what we've always done and just kind of get by. But the right answer is do the work and make the strategic improvements to the programs so that we can evolve what's happening with performance and comp the same way the market's evolving around us. And I think businesses that are doing that proactively are starting to see the rewards of it. And I also think that they're going to be further ahead in the competitive landscape with those that aren't.
Right. Yeah, I think it is important to take action. I mean, there's and adapt to the changing environment. I mean, it's tough to just batten down and not do anything and kind of wait for things to change or hope for things to change, right? I think that companies that have done that have found themselves behind the mark, and that has been a lot of the reason why there's been a huge interest in compensation towards the latter part of this year. I mean, let's just think of what's happened. I mean, there was a huge interest in compensation towards the latter part of this year because people were delaying pay decisions. Another thing was there was the Great Resignation, right? The people started wanting to move companies, and there was created a retention push. Oh my gosh, we have to keep our people, and then there's also the murmurs of inflation. Right? Oh, suddenly pay is going, or the prices are going up. That's gonna transfer over to pay, and then what I'm witnessing right now is that there's companies that were prepared for that and how to temper that information, and others that overreacted. And so, and it's because they didn't have a plan in place ahead of time. So those companies that overreacted are now going, geez, we just increased everybody's pay 15% to try to steer the change. And then now we're in trouble. Holy cow, we don't have any money in the budget. So yeah, so I think that having a plan in place, having a good partner in place, a company like DecuSoft, where they have this knowledge and a systematic approach, is quite critical for companies in this stage. So I don't think that we've been seeing a great or a big drive into those digital platforms, right? Different digital platforms as we're trying to enable our employees from afar. So how is DecuSoft taking that approach? How does DecuSoft help enable managers to better manage people remotely, to better make those right decisions, whether it's performance or pay?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's a great question, and what I would say is this, right? The biggest challenge that organizations, and then ultimately the people in the organization that actually make it happen, the managers, the leaders, whether that's on the functional side of supporting from an HR perspective or doing, it's the sales leader, the finance leader, whatever it is that needs to go and engage with their workforce. Their biggest challenge is the capacity, right? So one of the first things that we help with every customer that we work with is we give them the capacity to focus on what really matters in the business, right, versus the administrivia of doing a process, right? If we think about the traditional processes when you're going through, if we look at, the comp planning, there's the compensation teams. You well know, we know they're great partners for us. We love our comp team partners across our client base, but they're just one audience that we need to be able to work with. So we've got the tools for them. We make their lives easier. That's what we do. But it's how do we extend that capability to make managers' job easier, to understand what's happening, to understand where their employees sit, to have the insights and analytics to be able to make those decisions, not just get the recommendation for what the budget's saying, but how do they understand where their workforce is performing. One of the challenges you touched on a minute ago in some of these organizations is just overreacted. It's the classic oversteering issue. And next thing you know, you're going fast in the wrong direction again, the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Is that they lost sight. Became reactionary about very specific item. Oh, people are leaving. Let's pay them more. They're leaving because of money, or like that was a common sort of response. Versus what happened is most often a lot of these companies kept people they really didn't want to keep. They probably should have actually let them go and created an opportunity to like let that cycle play out and bring good talent from somewhere else into the organization. But the reaction takes over, the emotion takes over. And you lose sight of that performance component. How are these people? Are these people that are warranted? Where do they fit in our current range? What is the market looking like? Is that a sustainable trend? Is this a point in time? I believe a lot of what's happening in this trends is a point in time. There's dynamics that are probably not being talked about. If you think about the biggest impacts in the Great Resignation or in like the hospitality and retail spaces, hospitality and food, beverage, that kind of thing in particular. Well, why? Well, because those are businesses that there's been lots of clamoring around unionization, all this other stuff, not to get too far down the labor trend. But like, so what do? You start responding, be like, well, I'm going to pay more to stem that off. That becomes a response versus a sustainable trend, mostly around what's a dynamic that's happening in the market. That's a psychological thing. So I think there's a lot of really interesting things that are playing out. So what we help with is, number one, we give you capacity, get time back on your employees, spend time leading, right? Not doing administrivia, running this like convoluted process. Let's make this fast. Let's make this lightweight. Let's make it more iterative. Let's be smarter. Let's, work smarter, not harder. So we do that. Then, we're really trying to lean on analytics as tools to make better decisions, right? Better informed decisions. Obviously, we all can look at analytics and data and see through the rear view mirror, right? And there's some table stakes, what do reports give you, et cetera. But we want to help you look through the windshield and see where's the business going? What are the trends that are happening? Where are we today demographically? What does it look like from a DEI perspective for our business? What are our goals? Where are our OKRs around that? What are we trying to move the needle on? And how do we get there, right? So what's that path look like? And where do we want to start creating the right incentives and the right initiatives to move us in that direction, right? That's the strategic part that I think that a lot of organizations, not all, but a lot of organizations are losing traction on because they're getting sucked in to all of that other noise and distraction and effort that isn't necessarily allowing them to accelerate the real important stuff. So that's kind of how we view it right now. That's where I think we're helping. We're doing more within our product, which we can talk about, but that's what I think is happening out there. And that psychological sort of barrier that happens, the emotional drive that's happening with some of this stuff is overpowering sort of the strategic element. Mm-hmm. And some organizations, some of our customers, and many of the companies we're talking to that are going to be customers in the near future are starting to say, hey, like, we got to rise above this stuff and start getting out in front of it. And that's what we're going to help them do.
That's great. One thing that really resonates is, and I often hear a lot, is the gift of time. You're talking about, taking things off the plate of the HR department or a compensation professional so that they can focus on more strategic things. Now, I find that a lot of comp professionals like to be the spreadsheet hero, right? They like to show their acumen and control across creating custom tools and so forth, which of course, as we know, takes a lot of time, and there's a lot of risk inherent in that process. But one thing I often hear is that, well, I'm afraid that if we create or turn this over to a system or create this in a systemized process, it's gonna hurt our agility. I'm gonna lose control. I'm not going to be able to have control of the information or do those quick studies. What is your typical response to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody wants to feel that, it's kind of ironic to me. Everybody wants to feel in control, but when you have that sort of convoluted mess, I kind of equate it, I use analogies as you've probably seen, but you go and you take, we just came out of the holidays. So for me, it was, the Christmas lights I had to put up. As much as I take the care to properly wind them up, they always come out in a little bit of a nest, and I got to pull them apart. And then I have to make the decision, how much energy and time do I want to spend untangling versus just something doing clean. What I think we're able to do is kind of get rid of that tangled mess, right? And make it clean all the time, consistent. So you actually have a different kind of control, right? So that's kind of typically how I like to think about that and respond to that. It's a different kind of control, and there's an adjustment that has to happen at the organization. But it allows to foster better planning, better, again, spending time more on the bigger picture of the strategy versus a lot of the, I use the term administrivia, the busy work behind it. So I think that's kind of where we typically would kind of lead that discussion and sort of think about how we can improve.
Let's talk about a few things that I know that DecuSoft does really well. So performance and compensation. So on the performance side, we've seen a lot of changes in the industry over the past, actually 5 to 7 years now, as companies have been moving from performance ratings or annual reviews to more frequent reviews, maybe rating list reviews and so forth. What is DecuSoft doing to ensure that if a company is having a rating list review or having that type of feedback, that they can still have some sense of performance and pay or pay for performance?
Yeah, so we're not a performance management platform, in its traditional sense today. There's things that we're doing in that to support our customers, and that's actually a fast growing part of this platform, but we don't purely do that. Obviously we're comp, so I just want to qualify that. OKRs and goals is something we do a lot with our customers in the platform today, because that ultimately is what the performance is tied to, right? So that's kind of our starting point. But in terms of how are we addressing that, or how are we thinking about that? I think one of the things that we've tried to be really, really conscious about and thoughtful about with our platform and how we support customers is to be incredibly flexible and to allow for some level of sort of an agnostic nature of how the platform will work for the business. I think it's the greatest strength, quite honestly, that we bring compared to most of the competitors out there. They have good platforms. I'm not going to talk for doing certain things. But we are incredibly flexible, and we have the ability to truly tailor a solution. So it's not like we're going to sell you the solution that we want to sell you. We're going to sell you the solution and deliver what you need, right? Yeah. There's a very important, subtle but important difference in the two things. So we're really trying to look at, how do you do performance? How do you want that to evolve over time? Should it evolve for you? What does that rating look like? And how we bring that back into the system, and how do we tie it together so that we can understand? And then it comes into the answer, comes into the data, right? So what does a high performing individual look like in your organization within a range? How do you remove the bias from that, right? So, we start to be able to use our analytics tools. We start to be able to use our decisioning tools to start to give visibility first, starts with visibility, and then allowing for goaling and planning, and then allowing for administration to ultimately get there, right? So that, got to have the map, got to have the vehicle to get there, and then you got to have, someone to do the driving. So we kind of take that approach.
Yeah, well, one thing that I started off the conversation talking about how there's not a one size fits all approach to compensation, and that's the same thing as far as performance and how companies tie performance to pay as well. So I mean, sometimes I know that a lot of your clients are in the financial sector and so forth, which typically has some pretty complex performance management and whenever I think about a company that can handle complex performance management and turning it into pay decisions, I think of DecuSoft. So is there anything new that you're seeing as far as approaches? Because right now, a lot of managers are now advising, or they're working remotely. They have employees that are remote. Is there any kind of change in how the demands on the system are because of that new environment? Is it greater amounts of communication? What may that be?
Yeah, I think the digital transformation elements for businesses around what's happening with the mobile workforce, the hybrid workforce, the remote, however you want to say it, right? I think that is very real. And for a lot of organizations that were used to, passing each other in the hallway and having that face-to-face time, I don't know that it actually makes you good at performance, but it makes it easier to have those conversations in theory, right? So you have to be much more conscious about, how does that come into play? So I think that's a trend. I think that's something that we're seeing a lot of more of our customers do, and the market generally is trying to move that way. Having better way to pulse and understand kind of how people are doing is another trend that I'm a big believer in, right? So I've never been a fan of, quite honestly, the once a year performance review anywhere I've been. It's just never been something that sat well with me, even if I've had to live with it, in prior lives or whatever. I just don't believe that that's a great way to recognize performance. I think recognition has to be continuous. I think it has to be, relevant and timely, right, with what's happening. If something's going on, and recognition can take a lot of forms. But so giving a high five, a lot of organizations do that. But hey, great job. But they lose now, where does that go and carry it forward, so that I make sure that that's captured? It's on the employee now to remember, hey, remember when you gave me the high five? Or the manager to be like, yeah, I remember like the Q1 of last year, you did something great. What was that high five I gave you? Like, it's just, there's too much time that passes and you lose that, that relevance. So I think the thing that we are seeing more of, and what we're really trying to do more, even within our Compose platform for our customers, is really creating an opportunity for a lot more of a dynamic exchange to happen, more to really tie into that employee experience. And then ultimately, how does that all connect back to the compensation picture, to how does that, pay per performance, how does that really have weight to it? Does that really have, no pun intended, but merit to it in terms of like the way that it's supposed to be recognized? And it's not this sort of like memory jog exercise that everybody, whether they admit it or not out loud, is like, ready to jump off the building if it's high enough every, once a year, because it's the most painful process in the planet.
That's right. Well, I do find that communication is one of the hot topics that have popped up through the pandemic and continuing on. I mean, a lot of times, employees simply just don't know. They don't know. They don't understand the equity plan. They don't know how to drive performance or earn that bonus. There's a lot of different things like that. So I know that DecuSoft has the type of communication tools such as reward statements and so forth. But are you seeing that? Is there good practices that we can learn from DecuSoft when it comes to communication?
Yeah, so I definitely think, and there's again definitely ways to continue to get creative and improve upon it. But I made this comment, I think, when we were first connecting around the session, but I'm blown away at how many organizations still don't even use basic compensation statements, right?
Yeah.
Or well, and they miss the opportunity to kind of really show the full picture to the employee. Or even how they manage that process, right? So they may have a statement, but then what is really like the process and the conversation, the engagement that's, that around that with the employee, and how do I understand how that can change over time? Like that kind of stuff. Again, some organizations better than others, some leaders better than others, but there's an opportunity to really improve in those areas. So we definitely see that. That's an area that we're helping. And the static output, it's something, every one of our customers takes advantage of the ability to create a really cool and great comp statement for their employees. What we also do is we have a component of that that's, that lives throughout the year. It's not the point in time. At any point in time, you can look at your total sort of history and your profile. So how have I progressed throughout my career at this company? Where am I going next? What does that look like? Starting to see some trending and some, graphs and charting around how that's, changing over my career. What are my goals and again, aspirations, if I can make a move up. And where I think we are going to, see more and more of that going is how do we play that out and model that out for the future? If I have a 5-year career plan and I'm working with my leader on that, how can I start to model what that looks like for me and how that's going to change my picture, right?
Yeah.
Like that people aren't doing that kind of stuff, but we do that and can do that inside of our Compose platform. So that's kind of where, I think it becomes a lot more proactive and a lot more about the employee's journey rather than just, again, I used the analogy differently earlier, but rather than, hey, here's what the rear view mirror tells you, we passed those exits before, but here's where we're going. And that's what I think is exciting for employees.
That's great. Past, present, and future. That's awesome that you added that extra element on there. I mean, I always enjoyed. I remember working in the financial industry, and just like the financial industry, they would show you this is where we've grown your pay. You over the past 5 years, and now I thought that was pretty cool because most companies are just showing the current. If they show compensation at all, it's just this year snapshot or maybe a 2-year snapshot or whatever. But so I think that showing those elements is important. Also, if we just think about it as compensation professionals, we recommend these programs, they get them installed, and the companies spend millions of dollars on that long-term incentive program or that bonus program, and then they don't market it at all. They don't tell employees anything about how it's like an afterthought when they leave They send us their letter of resignation. And they go, oh wait, by the way, don't you remember this stuff? So then it's too late, right? So
yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's and a lot of times I think of there's certain things that organizations do that's kind of a check the box exercise, and meaning like you just go through the motion of it, and it's like, yeah, did it, but it's not being taken to full advantage of, to your point. And I think that's one of those things. But we want to be able to start to help organizations provide their employees a glimpse into the future in some way. And I think that can be very powerful. Not every organization is comfortable doing that for a number of reasons, because the same reason why there's not a lot of comfort in the marketplace with transparency as a theme, because there's a fear, that FUD element, fear, uncertainty, doubt, like how do we position, and that's where I think a good understanding of data trends, we have partnerships with all the different data survey providers, and they're doing a really great job understanding what's been happening, but also kind of like where's the market today, and then how does this all start to come together full cycle, because it really does, whether you're conscious of it or not.
Right. Well, kind of shifting a little bit more the conversation towards the compensation trends, I'd be interested to hear what you're seeing in the marketplace and with your clients. But right now, of course, we've experienced the Great Resignation, and companies trying to react with pay and so forth, and we're also seeing that people be more mobile, moving across the United States, moving across the globe, and different types of pay practices emerge, such as the global nomad structure, the more general geographic differentials, maybe even a national structure. So, is there anything that you're seeing that you can enlighten us on?
Yeah, for sure. So let's start. Let me just make a general comment about Great Resignation to start. So that trend has been out there. It's a buzzword. The data is kind of interesting, not that we're getting into a big data discussion today, but if you think about the data behind it, the argument's not necessarily holding water really well across the board, right? Because there's other movements and trends happening simultaneously. The economy, think about it, knock on wood, is incredibly strong. There's a comfort level to make a move. So whether or not you may be happy in your current environment, but there's this comfort level, like why not make a change? There's tons of opportunity out there, right? Because the economy is strong, people are hiring, job creation has been solid, right? So the data, it doesn't really say that there's this giant I'm just resigning because I'm unhappy, right?
Hmm.
Whether that's pay, whether that's whatever. And most people know that pay is probably number 3 or 4 on the list typically for reasons why people leave a job. Usually number 1 is the leader
Mhm.
or the manager, right? So, or the environment they work in, right? So those are that culture, that other stuff. But how do you create a great culture is kind of right back to that. So what are we seeing in trends? Well, that theme and that story around culture has changed a lot for organizations, because if the culture was everybody's in the office and everybody's seeing each other every day, and all of a sudden that doesn't happen, well, I don't know that you can completely transform who you are, but you can certainly recreate that experience in a digital world. But that takes conscious effort, that takes leadership, that takes tools and implementation, that takes process. So on that stand, in terms of pay, to the question, yeah, I think the big one, the nomad concept, et cetera, where it's like, hey, you can go, we're comfortable with you being remote. We trust you. We have an understanding of your ability to do your job, and it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be in New York or San Francisco, just to pick, coastal examples, right? You can go and be in Kentucky or Nebraska or someplace that, if that's where your family is, if that's where you want to lay down your roots, like, we're cool with that, right? So then the trend becomes, well, if I hired you and brought you in and to San Francisco or New York, to use those polar contrasts, with the other, it's like I paid for San Francisco and New York, so
Yeah.
I want to give you that flexibility. But as an organization, is that sustainable for us to go and all of a sudden create a labor market in my example of Kentucky and Nebraska? And those are beautiful places to live, but they're not San Francisco and New York in terms of cost of living,
Mhm.
right? So that's that kind of piece. So that does look at your data, that understands what you are. How do you do that in a way where employees don't feel like, oh, I'm just getting a pay cut. I'm getting a
Right.
quality of life lift, right? So I got to be able
Exactly.
to foster that kind of culture, create that continuity, that connectivity still with the business, but you don't have to be in San Francisco. So it's a win-win arrangement, right? And yeah, compensation adjustments natural. It's good for you. You may not feel right, but you're getting the better quality experience in total. And for the business, it's a sustainable model, because without a business, like, that job doesn't exist, right? So the business can only take on so much. If everyone's like living in the middle of the country, and no one's in San Francisco anymore, or New York anymore, it's a very expensive business to run at that point, if you're paying
Right.
as if they were, right? So that's kind of what's happening out there. And I think that trend, it makes sense, but it takes, you need, how do you manage that?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, our clients are all large, or, what I guess you could call, enterprise, right? We
Mhm.
work with some small companies too, that are really thoughtful around comp, and they want to, but generally their complexity is a little less, and they don't have as many employees to manage. So, it's a smaller percentage of our customers. Most of our customers are thousands of employees, tens of thousands of employees, and they're, uh, you know, they have global reach. They have employees all over the world. So how do you manage that when someone could be like, hey, I want to go in Buenos Aires, for the next 6 months, right? Or I want to
Yeah.
go, like, that's in the traditional comp systems, like, which is oftentimes spreadsheet driven. Like, and by the way, I'm a big fan of Excel. I love it. Don't get me wrong. It's a great tool, but it's hard to manage all that, right? So you
Right.
need a system that can manage that at scale, that can do it efficiently, that can let you make decisions faster. And I think that's the other trend is, like, folks are not only struggling to figure out how do we make these adjustments, but how do we do it, like, in a really scalable, efficient way. That's probably some of the pain that they're feeling right now.
Yeah, exactly. And also compliant with local regulations, right? So, knowing that GDPR, it's tough to send around spreadsheets to keep it
Oh
secure
man,
and
the
compliant, right?
security of it. Well,
Yeah.
I'm blown away. So, thankfully, obviously it's not any of our customers, but like some of the customers, or I guess prospects would be the general term, companies that come to us or that we reach out to, and they're like, oh yeah, we're doing this on spreadsheets, homegrown system. It's great. And I'm like, man, you're a global organization, billions of dollars, and you're doing it on, the security risk of that. That's
Yeah,
scary. That blows my mind. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh,
I know.
like, why would you ever do that? But
Yeah, Wall Street can make a fat finger just mistake, and we know what kind of damage that does, right?
oh my
So,
goodness. It's so, yeah. So, securing that, doing it at scale. And that's really where, we shine, bring them,
Yeah.
that system for, but those are the trends, like, and you just see that happening out there. And again, I said it earlier in the discussion, it's a joint learning experience for everybody right now. And some are learning faster than others, like anything in life, but
Yeah. Well, Michael, it's been great speaking with you. I know we're coming to a close here, but can you tell us what we can look forward to in 2022 with DecuSoft? What are you guys working on?
yeah, so we are working on several things. We're expanding our OKR and goals suite. So the ability to really create a holistic picture between what are the top level goals of the organization, how those get cascaded down across all the different employee levels, and then how does that connect back meaningfully to what's happening with compensation, recognition, whatever those programs are, whether it's traditional, comp and, bonus and merit, or, if it's equity and incentive programs tied to that, which we manage and provide, tool sets for our customers, or anything else for that matter, that might be creative solutions that a customer might come up with. I think we're going to see a bigger demand for that. So that flexibility I talked about earlier is going to be a big piece. So that's a big one that ties into performance more broadly. So that's something we're expanding upon. We're doing a lot more with analytics. So our analytics platform, I think, has been met with really rave reviews from our customers, but we know and we have opportunities to do a lot more. So we're bringing AI into that, a lot more into insights. So that's ahead. We're improving and expanding on a mobile experience. That's another big thing. Because of the employee experience as a whole, we really believe that we need to have a strong mobile experience. Our comp professionals, the planners, the financial professionals working in the business, they're going to work in the desktop solution, and the cloud solution, right? But the employees, the managers, being able to make decisions, to see information on mobile is a big part, and we provide some of that today, but to be able to do that in a more significant way is a big part of our plans. Those are probably the glimpses I would give at this point. But it's something that I think is being met very early into the beginning of this year already, at the end of last year, with really good demand and really high interest from our customers. We work with all kinds of industries. We certainly have many of them are in the financial services and the professional services space. So if I was like, say, percentages, it's a large percent, financial services broad, but banks, financial institutions as a whole, alternative investment firms, asset management companies. These are all companies. We have, tons of private equity, fund management. I mean, those are a big part of our customer base because there's a lot of complexity. Anything with a lot of partnerships, where there's complex partnership, allocations have to be made tied to different incentives and structures, that we just handle that incredibly well. So we do a lot with law firms and professional service firms and large accounting practices that have that kind of complexity. So those are all areas. And then, there's evolving businesses that are just trying to get out and get beyond the standard day-to-day of traditional comp, and that's where I think we're focused, is how do we help them make these adjustments that we've been talking about today. How do you get out and do that? So we're excited to help, and we've been doing this for 20 plus years, and we really believe that at the end of the day, we have the best platform out there, and it continues to get better every day. So
that's great. Thanks, Michael. So, hey, Jackson, it's been pretty quiet there on the with the community. So I just want to point out to our listeners, this is your last chance to ask Michael. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. We can take those right now. We'll allow a few minutes as we're coming to a close here. But Michael, I'd like to just say thank you once again for joining us on the Rewards Mastermind. I know DecuSoft has appeared a few times here, as we've seen how the product has developed over the years, and so it's been quite a pleasure.
Yeah, it's absolutely a pleasure, Sam. And I'm new to the firm, right? I got here at the beginning of December, so I'm a rookie, but I'm excited. I'm really am. If it doesn't come across, believe me, I'm incredibly excited. I'm excited about this organization. I'm excited about what's happening in the comp profession right now, in the HR landscape right now, in the global business landscape right now when it comes to comp. And like I said early in the discussion, I really believe we are sitting at this collective group, many of the listeners who are in the comp and HR profession, we're sitting at a really what I think will be an inflection point in our history in business where, this becomes a major driving force for organizations. And for all too long, it was, how do we get a seat at the table? How do we have, become
Yeah.
part of the strategic? And now's the time to seize the day. And, the tools and support are out there, just have to go and look for them. But we're happy to help. And if anybody listening or, wants to reach out, by all means, come and visit us at Techisoft.com and check us out on, LinkedIn and, but we'd be happy to show you what we can do with our platform. We'd be happy to talk and help assess, what it is you're trying to achieve in your business and how we can help you achieve it.
Great. Well, thank you once again. It's a pleasure having this conversation. It was great conversation. So hopefully we'll have a chance to talk to you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, great seeing you, Jackson. Good to see you and meet you. And thank you all for being part of this. Look forward to future conversations.
All right. Happy New Year, everyone. All right. Bye.
Yeah.